Welcome to Starbound. My name's Bree and I will be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Freyren and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap join below to become a Starbound member. Now let's get into today's story.
Dawn broke cold over the Montana highlands, painting the rolling pastures in shades of amber and gold. Hank Townsend stood on his porch, steaming coffee mug in one hand, squinting at the horizon, where his cattle grazed like dark specks against the landscape. 52 years had carved deep lines into his face, weathering it like the barn timber that had stood against a century of hard winters. "Rex," he called, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Bandit, time to work." The border collies bounded from the porch, tails whipping with eager energy. Rex, the oldest at 8, led the pack with the quiet confidence of a lieutenant. The others, Bandit, Sadie, and young Scout, fanned out behind, awaiting commands. Hank drained his coffee, set the mug on the railing, and reached for his battered Stetson. The bank notice lay on the kitchen table where he'd left it. Final warning printed in red. 60 days to clear arrears or foreclosure proceedings would begin. 4 generations of Townsends had worked this land. He'd be damned if he lost it on his watch. "Let's go, boys," he said, ignoring the fact that Sadie was female. She never seemed to mind. The morning routine was as familiar as his own heartbeat. The dogs moved through the pastures with ease, responding to Hank's whistles and hand signals with near-perfect understanding. Rex especially seemed to anticipate commands before they were given, cutting off stray cattle with the focus of a chess master. "Good boy," Hank murmured as Rex herded a stubborn heifer back to the group. The drought had hit them hard this year. Feed costs were up, cattle prices down, and 3 calves lost to mountain lions in the past month. His trusty Remington 700 stayed slung across his back these days, a necessary precaution. By mid-morning, they'd moved the herd to the north pasture where the grass grew thicker. Hank dismounted from his ATV, stretching his back with a grimace. Old rodeo injuries never quite healed right. "Need to check that fence line," he told Rex, as he would an old friend. Rex in turn watched him with intelligent eyes. "Those posts were wobbly last week." Rex trotted alongside as Hank walked the perimeter. The other dogs stayed with the cattle, Bandit taking temporary command with natural ease. The fence needed work, another expense he couldn't afford, but it might hold another month if he reinforced the worst sections. He was hammering a support stake when Rex's ears perked up. The dog growled low, staring toward a distant ridge. "What is it, boy? Another lion?" Hank reached for his rifle, scanning the direction of Rex's focus. That's when he saw it, a flash of light too bright to be natural, followed by what looked like a contrail slicing down toward the far woods. Something had fallen from the sky. Curiosity warred with caution. Could be a meteorite. Could be something military from the base 60 miles south. Either way, it had come down on his property. "Come on," he told Rex, starting the ATV. "Let's check it out." They found it in a clearing, steam rising from scorched earth, not a meteorite. The object was clearly manufactured, smooth metal with no seams Hank could discern, roughly the size of his pickup truck. No markings, no windows, just an oval capsule, half buried in dirt. Hank killed the ATV engine, listening. Silence except for distant birdsong and Rex's soft panting. "Stay," he commanded, lifting his rifle as he approached the object. 10 feet away, a seam appeared in the metal where there had been none before. Rex growled, hackles rising. Hank raised his rifle to his shoulder, finger resting against the trigger guard. The seam widened, becoming a doorway. A figure emerged, and Hank's world tilted sideways. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, impossibly thin with 4-fingered hands and skin the pale blue of a robin's egg. The face was almost human in arrangement, 2 large eyes, a nose-like protrusion, a mouth, but the proportions were wrong, the eyes too big, the mouth too small. It wore what Hank's mind stubbornly identified as a suit, complete with what might have been a necktie. The creature stumbled, clutching at what appeared to be a wound in its side. A dark fluid stained the suit. "God damn," Hank breathed, lowering his rifle slightly. He'd seen plenty in 52 years, but nothing prepared a man for this. The creature spoke, a series of clicks and whistles. Then it reached to its collar and adjusted something, and suddenly English came out. "Assistance required. Structural integrity compromised during landing." The voice was flat, mechanical. "Requesting medical aid if available." Hank stared. The thing was asking for help. Wounded, crushed on foreign soil, asking a stranger for help. Some things, apparently, were universal. "You're bleeding," Hank said, stating the obvious while his mind raced to catch up. "Yes, internal damage suspected. Are you a medical professional?" The creature swayed slightly. "Veterinarian's about 40 miles from here," Hank said. "I can do basic first aid." He stitched up enough ranch injuries over the years, human and animal alike. "Acceptable. I am diplomatic envoy Gorgon of the Three Chords Alliance." The creature attempted what might have been a bow and nearly toppled over. Rex barked suddenly, whirling toward the tree line. Hank's attention snapped in the same direction, rifle raising instinctively. The mountain lion emerged from the shadows, powerful muscles rippling beneath tawny fur. It paused at the edge of the clearing, assessing the strange tableau before it. "Don't move," Hank told the alien, because what else could it be, as he aimed carefully. The alien, Gorgon, made a high-pitched sound of distress. "Predator! Predator species!" It backed up, stumbling against its craft. The movement triggered the mountain lion's instincts. It charged, covering ground with shocking speed. Hank tracked it with his rifle, but it was moving too fast, and the alien was in his line of fire. He stepped sideways, trying for a clear shot, knowing he'd be too late. Rex moved like lightning. One moment, the border collie was at Hank's side. The next, he was a black and white missile launching directly at the mountain lion. His normal herding bark transformed into a battle cry that would have done a wolf ancestor proud. The lion, expecting fleeing prey, found itself confronted with 60 pounds of fearless canine aggression. Rex didn't attack directly. He was smarter than that. He darted in and out, teeth snapping, creating a whirlwind of noise and movement between the predator and its intended prey. The mountain lion hesitated, confused by this unexpected defense and the strange sense in the clearing. That moment was all Hank needed. He sighted down the barrel and fired a warning shot into the ground near the big cat. The crack of the rifle combined with Rex's continued harassment was enough. The mountain lion turned and bounded back into the forest, deciding whatever meal might be had here wasn't worth the trouble. "Rex, heel," Hank called. The dog immediately broke off, returning to Hank's side, alert and ready for further commands. Gorgon had pressed himself flat against his craft, trembling visibly. "It nearly consumed me," he said, voice modular, unable to fully convey what sounded like shock. "The small quadruped defended against a creature many times its size. Inexplicable behavior." Hank knelt to ruffle Rex's fur, checking him quickly for injuries. "Not inexplicable. That's his job." He looked up at the alien. "You say you're hurt. Let me take a look." Gorgon hesitated, then nodded, allowing Hank to examine a wound in his side. It wasn't as bad as the blood, or whatever the dark fluid was, suggested. A deep gash, but no organs seemed damaged, as far as Hank could tell.
Need to clean and close this,
Hank said.
I got a first aid on the ATV.
As he worked on the wound, Gorgon recovered enough to ask questions. The quadruped, it has a designation?
Yeah. His name's Rex.
Hank carefully applied antiseptic, noting how the alien winced, just like a human would.
He's a border collie. Working dog.
Working? You mean enslaved? Hank snorted.
Try telling him that. Border collies live to work. It's in their blood.
He began applying butterfly bandages to hold the wound closed.
What were you doing out here anyway? Don't imagine you crashed on purpose.
Gorgon explained that he was an advanced scout for a diplomatic mission. His species had been observing Earth for some time and had decided to initiate formal contact soon. He'd been doing final reconnaissance when his craft malfunctioned. A malfunction shouldn't be possible, he admitted. Our technology is highly reliable.
Everything breaks eventually,
Hank said, securing the last bandage.
Need to get my neighbor Mitch up here with his ham radio set up. Unless you got a space phone to call your people?
Communication device damaged in landing, but there is an automated distress protocol. A rescue craft should arrive within your planetary rotation. Gorgon straightened, testing the bandages. My species does not have natural predators on our world. The concept is disturbing.
Keeps you sharp,
Hank said, packing up the first aid kit.
You evolve differently when something's trying to eat you.
Rex had settled into a watchful crouch, eyes still scanning the tree line. Gorgon studied him with fascination. The quadruped shows remarkable intelligence and courage. It could have bled the predator.
He,
Hank corrected.
And no, he couldn't have. Not in his nature to run when there's a job to do.
He obeys your vocal commands with perfect compliance, yet shows independent decision-making in crisis. Fascinating dichotomy. Hank shrugged.
Good dogs know when to listen and when to think for themselves.
They spent the rest of the day waiting for Gorgon's rescue. The alien was particularly interested in Rex and the other dogs when Hank brought them all to the clearing after securing the cattle. He watched in amazement as they responded to Hank's whistles and hand signals, working in perfect coordination. On our world, companion creatures are purely decorative, Gorgon explained. They produce pleasing sounds or have aesthetic appearances. None serve practical functions.
Oh, we have those as well, but these ain't pets,
Hank said.
They're partners.
When the rescue ship arrived, thankfully after dark to avoid being spotted by nearby towns, Gorgon insisted on providing compensation for Hank's assistance.
Unnecessary,
Hank said gruffly.
Anyone would have helped.
I suspect that is not universally accurate, Gorgon replied. Additionally, proper diplomatic protocol requires acknowledgement of aid rendered. He pressed something resembling a credit card into Hank's hand. This contains what my species considers a modest gratuity, convertible to your currency through any major financial institution. If they ask how you got, lie. We would prefer to keep the first contact schedule as planned. Before Hank could protest further, Gorgon bowed to both Hank and Rex and boarded the rescue craft. It rose silently into the night sky, leaving only a scorched patch of earth as evidence it had ever been there. 3 days later, Hank visited his bank in town. The manager's eyes bulged when he processed the alien card. Mr. Townsend, there must be some mistake.
Problem?
Hank asked, suddenly worried the alien currency wouldn't convert after all. No, sir, just the amount. It's substantial. The manager cleared his throat. Enough to clear your mortgage entirely with significant reserves. Hank stared at the figure on the screen. Gorgon's idea of a modest gratuity would keep the ranch running for decades. In the weeks that followed, the world learned what Hank already knew. Humanity wasn't alone. Gorgon's people, the Darmonians, representing the larger grand consortium of aligned systems, made official first contact. It was a meticulously planned global event. Announcements, shared technologies, tentative diplomatic ties established. Humanity, reeling and fascinated, stepped onto the galactic stage. Amidst the whirlwind of global change, Gorgon's official report detailed his unscheduled landing and rescue. It specifically highlighted the actions of a Terran agriculturalist and his remarkably courageous and intelligent working companion against a native predator. This anecdote sparked considerable interest within the consortium's newly formed Earth Relations Division, particularly regarding the unique human-animal bonds Gorgon had described. So while the world debated alien treaties and stared at newly visible stars, Hank focused on his ranch, using a portion of the funds to finally modernise the irrigation system. He'd just finished overseeing the installation when they returned, though not Gorgon. 3 sleek vehicles without wheels hovered inches above his driveway. From the lead vehicle emerged a creature similar to Gorgon, but more elaborately dressed with what appeared to be decorative stones embedded in its skin. "Hunk Townsend?" it asked, its translator rendering a pompous nasal tone. "I am Administrative Coordinator Plib of the Grand Consortium of Aligned Systems. Your assistance to Envoy Gorgon and the unique capabilities of your canines were noted with great interest during our initial diplomatic interrogation briefings. We have a business proposition regarding your companion animals." The Stellar Harmony Station looked like something from one of those science fiction shows Hank's mother never let him watch. A massive structure hanging in the blackness of space, all curved lines and bright lights with smaller craft buzzing around it like flies around a carcass. Hank stood at the viewport of the transport ship, his 4 border collies clustered around his legs. He wore what he always wore: jeans, flannel shirt, boots, and Stetson, having refused the appropriate attire Plib had offered. The dogs wore their working vests, which Hank had insisted on to indicate they were on duty, not pets for petting. "We'll arrive in approximately 7 of your minutes," Plib announced, hovering nervously at the edge of the room. None of the aliens had come close to the dogs during the journey, despite continually commenting on how adorable they were. "They got grass there?" Hank asked. "Dogs need exercise." "We've prepared a simulation area with appropriate organic material," Plib assured him. "The amenities in your quarters exceed 5-star classification by Earth standards." Hank grunted. He wasn't here for luxury. He was here because Plib had offered enough money to secure the Townsend Ranch for generations. A 2-week commitment to show off his dogs at some fancy diplomatic summit in exchange for his great-grandchildren's financial security seemed like a fair trade. The explanation had been more complicated. Something about demonstrating Earth's unique companion creature relationships to smooth diplomatic relations. But Hank had stopped listening after the financial details. He'd bring his dogs. They'd do some simple demonstrations, everyone would be impressed, and he'd go home richer than he'd ever imagined possible. Simple. Docking was smoother than parking a car. Their greeting party consisted of more aliens in increasingly elaborate outfits, all keeping a noticeable distance from the dogs.
Your reputation precedes you, Earth Handler Townsend,
said one with particular flourishes on his clothing.
I am Station Coordinator Billin. We're honored by your presence and that of your working companions.
Just Hank is fine, he replied, shaking the offered hand carefully, noting how delicate the alien's bones felt.
These are Rex, Bandit, Sadie, and Scout.
The aliens murmured appreciatively, but still maintained their distance.
We've prepared your accommodations in our most prestigious visitor sector,
Billin said, leading them through curved corridors filled with strange sights and smells. The dogs stayed in perfect heel position, though their eyes darted curiously at their surroundings. Hank's quarters were larger than his entire house, with views of stars through ceiling-high windows. The dogs immediately inspected every corner, noses working overtime.
There's a dedicated organic recreation area through that portal,
Billin explained, pointing to a doorway.
We've researched optimal conditions for canine comfort.
Hank checked it and was surprised to find a decent approximation of a grassy meadow, though something about the texture seemed off. Still, it would do for the dog's needs.
Now, if you're sufficiently rested, I'd like to show you our Terran Biodiversity exhibition,
Billin continued.
It's the centerpiece of our cultural exchange program for the summit.
What kind of exhibition? Hank asked, suddenly wary.
We've gathered representative species from your planet to showcase Earth's remarkable companion diversity,
Billin said proudly.
The delegates will be fascinated.
Hank's unease grew as they walked through the station.
What exactly do you mean by representative species?
Billin produced a tablet-like device and showed him a list. Hank's blood ran cold. Wolves, foxes, coyotes, raccoons, wolverines, mountain lions?
These aren't companion animals, he said sharply. These are wild predators, dangerous ones. Did Gorgon ever talk to you people?
Billin waved a dismissive hand.
We've researched extensively. Your planet's companions are all gentle herbivores with decorative points. Decorative?
Hank stopped walking.
Those decorative points are teeth and claws designed for killing. A wolverine will tear your arm off just for standing near it. Nonsense, Billin chuckled. Our researchers observed them in various environments. They're perfectly docile when properly maintained. Sedated, you mean?
Hank guessed.
Temporarily calmed for transport and acclimation,
Billin corrected.
The exhibition opens tomorrow evening at the welcome reception. You'll be our honored guest, of course.
Hank felt a sick pit forming in his stomach.
I need to see this exhibition now.
Billin hesitated, then relented.
As you wish, though it's still in final preparation stages.
The Terran Biodiversity exhibition occupied an entire section of the station, divided into what the aliens considered appropriate habitats. Hank saw immediately that whoever designed it had no understanding of Earth's wildlife. Predators and prey were housed together. Enclosures were wholly inadequate for the species they contained, and the entire setup screamed disaster waiting to happen. A team of aliens in matching uniforms tended to the animals. all of which appeared suspiciously calm.
How heavily are they sedated?
Hank demanded.
Merely relaxed for their comfort,
replied one of the caretakers.
The sedation will be reduced for the exhibition so delegates can appreciate their natural behaviors.
Their natural behavior will be to kill everything threatening them, Hank said flatly, including your delegates. The caretaker looked offended.
That's simply not accurate. Observe.
He pointed to an enclosure where a wolf and a rabbit were in the same habitat, the wolf lying calmly in a corner.
Perfect harmony.
That wolf is drugged out of its mind, Hank said. The minute those drugs wear off, that rabbit is dinner.
Our chemical balance is precisely calibrated,
the caretaker insisted.
They'll be alert but docile for the exhibition.
Hank needed to speak to whoever was in charge. This wasn't just misguided, it was potentially deadly. Billen reluctantly arranged a meeting with the Grand Coordinator, Magova, who turned out to be the most elaborately decorated alien yet, with multiple jeweled chains hanging from various body parts and skin dyed in patterns that probably indicated high status.
Earth Handler Townsend,
Magova said without rising from behind a crescent-shaped desk.
I understand you have concerns about our exhibition.
Those animals will kill each other and your guests, Hank said bluntly. They need proper enclosures and separation. Magova smiled condescendingly.
We've studied your planet's companions thoroughly. Our research division spent considerable resources observing them in their native environments.
From a distance, I'm guessing, Hank retorted. Have any of your researchers actually been in a cage with a mountain lion? One that isn't sedated?
Our observational methods are advanced beyond direct interaction requirements,
Magova said, which Hank translated as no. Look, Hank tried again. I've spent my life working with animals. Those predators ain't pets. They're wild killers, evolved over millions of years to hunt and eat other species. They can't be displayed like this. Magova's expression hardened.
The exhibition has been planned for months. Delegates from 17 systems are arriving specifically to view it. Cancellation is not an option.
Then at least separate the predators from the prey, encourage security on the enclosures, and keep them sedated, Hank urged.
Minor adjustments can be considered,
Magova conceded with obvious reluctance.
But the exhibition proceeds as scheduled. That will be all, Earth Handler.
Hank left the meeting seething. These aliens had no concept of what they were dealing with. That evolved without natural predators and couldn't comprehend the danger. That night, he took Rex on an unauthorized tour of the exhibition's back areas. The other dogs remained in their quarters. Security was laughably lax. Apparently, theft wasn't a concern in their society. Hank quickly found the animal care section, where he discovered a young alien checking monitoring equipment. You shouldn't be here, the alien said nervously when it spotted them. Name's Hank, this is Rex. Hank kept his voice friendly. Just checking on the animals. You the night supervisor? Junior caretaker Mip, the alien replied. I monitor vital signs during rest cycle. Hank noticed Mip didn't back away from Rex like the others had. You seem comfortable around him. Mip nodded. I studied independently on companion-creature relationships. Fascinating symbiosis. Others don't understand it. Hank had found an ally. Mip, these enclosures aren't secure. When those sedatives wear off, you're gonna have predators loose on your station. Mip looked troubled. I've expressed similar concerns, but exhibition policy is determined by upper administration. Can you at least help me separate the most dangerous ones and increase the sedative doses for the reception? Mip hesitated, then nodded. Limited adjustments are within my authority. I can separate incompatible species and recalibrate sedation levels. They spent hours moving animals and adjusting enclosures. It wasn't enough, not nearly, but it might prevent immediate disaster when the exhibition opened. They're not listening to you either, Hank observed as they worked. The consortium evolved without predator-prey dynamics, Mip explained. The concept that one creature would consume another is considered theoretical rather than practical reality. They think Earth's predator behaviors are exaggerated in research. They'll learn differently tomorrow, Hank said grimly. The welcome reception was even more extravagant than Hank had expected. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of species gathered in the grand hall, though the blue aliens predominated. Music played from unseen sources, tables groaned with strange foods, and holographic displays showcased various worlds and cultures. Hank and his dogs were immediate celebrities. Delegates crowded around, marveling at the border collie's responsiveness to commands and their obvious intelligence. Rex performed a simple demonstration of herding techniques using floating service bowls as substitute sheep, earning gasps of appreciation from the crowd. The aliens kept trying to pet the dogs without permission, ignoring Hank's explanations about working animals. He finally had to institute a strict ask before touching policy, which most respectfully followed.
They're remarkably well behaved, commented a tall, spindly alien of indeterminate race. Our companion creatures would be overwhelmed by such crowds.
They're focused on their job, Hank explained, which is making me look good right now. An hour into the reception, Billen appeared at Hank's elbow.
The exhibition is opening momentarily, he announced. Special displays are being brought out for the delegates' immediate appreciation before they tour the main habitats.
Hank's sense of dread returned. What special displays?
Representative Earth companions with handlers for close observation, Billen said proudly.
Across the room, a side door opened and Hank's worst fear materialized. A Darmonian in elaborate dress was leading what appeared to be a wolverine on a decorative leash. The animal's movements were sluggish, but growing more alert by the second. Jesus Christ, Hank muttered. He turned to his dogs. Stay, all of you stay. Their training held as he pushed through the crowd toward the impending disaster. He was still 20 feet away when the wolverine fully awoke. Its reaction was instantaneous and violent. It lunged at its handler, powerful jaws clamping onto the alien's arm. Green blood sprayed as the Darmonian shrieked in pain and shock. The decorative leash dropped. The wolverine, now fully free and enraged by the unfamiliar surroundings, charged into the crowd of delegates. Chaos erupted. The panicking handler who had been bitten stumbled backward into another display, accidentally releasing a cage containing 2 foxes, which immediately darted in opposite directions through the screaming crowd. Aliens scattered in terror, many freeze in place, others running erratically, reactions that would trigger chase responses in predators. Station security personnel rushed in with what looked like stun weapons, but their shots went wide in the chaos, striking delegates instead of animals. Hank whistled sharply, the command for urgent attention. All 4 border collies' heads snapped towards him, instantly alert despite the pandemonium.
Rex, Bandit, contain!
He pointed toward the Wolverine, which was now cornering a group of terrified delegates. The 2 dogs moved like lightning, understanding their task was to isolate and control, not to attack.
Sadie, Scout, Herd!
He gestured toward the main exit, and the 2 younger dogs immediately began doing what generations of breeding had perfected, systematically moving panicking aliens towards safety, nipping at heels when necessary, creating order from chaos. As his dogs took control of the situation, Hank grabbed a decorative cord from a nearby display and fashioned a crude snare. The Wolverine had backed several delegates against a wall, its powerful body tensed into spring. Rex and Bandit worked in perfect coordination, one darting in from the left to draw the predator's attention, the other moving in from the right with a series of sharp barks. The Wolverine, confused by the pincer movement, spun back and forth, unable to focus on either dog long enough to attack. Hank circled behind, snare ready. When the Wolverine lunged at Rex, he made his move, dropping the loop over the animal's head and pulling tight. The Wolverine thrashed and snarled, but Hank held firm, keeping the cord taut.
Get those people out of here!
He shouted to a nearby security officer who finally snapped into action, leading the trapped delegates away. Grand Coordinator Magova pushed through the crowd, face contorted with rage and fear.
Kill these monsters!
He demanded of his security team.
Terminate all the Earth creatures!
Hank let go of the snare with one hand and grabbed Magova by his decorative collar, pulling him close.
Touch my dogs and you'll see savage, he growled. They're saving your people right now.
To demonstrate, he whistled a command to Rex, who immediately broke off from the Wolverine and began driving it toward a service corridor. Hank pulled on the snare, guiding the thrashing animal after the dog. When they reached the corridor, Hank shoved the Wolverine inside and slammed the security door shut.
That, he said to the astonished Magova, is how you handle a predator. Now we got more work to do.
Before Magova could respond, the station's announcement system cracked to life. Emergency alert. Containment failure in Terran exhibition sector. Multiple Earth specimens loose in levels 3 through 7. All personnel implement emergency protocols. The blood drained from Magova's face.
The main exhibition enclosures. They failed? Told you they would,
Hank said grimly. The situation had just escalated from bad to catastrophic. Dozens of Earth predators loose on a space station filled with aliens who had no concept of how to handle them. Most of the security personnel were already injured or in retreat. Magova's pomposity evaporated.
Help us, he pleaded. You understand these creatures. I need full authority, Hank said. No questions, no committee decisions. What I say goes until this is contained.
Granted, Magova said immediately, tapping a command into his wrist device. You are now designated Emergency Wildlife Manager with station-wide command priority. Hank's first decision was to establish a command centre away from the panic of the reception hall. The station's kitchen facilities proved ideal. Sturdy doors, multiple access points to different sections, and plenty of space to work. Using the station's holographic displays, he examined the layout, identifying where animals had been reported and prioritizing the most dangerous situations.
Life support and environmental controls are critical,
he told the small team of aliens willing to help.
So is the main power center. We focus on protecting those systems and rescuing any trapped personnel.
He divided his dogs into teams. Rex would stay with him for direct confrontations with the most dangerous predators. Bandit would work with a security team to secure perimeters. Sadie and Scout would assist with evacuation and herding civilians to safe zones.
These animals hunt by instinct,
he explained to his improvised task force.
They're in a strange environment with unfamiliar scents and sounds that make them unpredictable, but they'll follow certain patterns. Predators will seek confined spaces where they feel protected. They'll establish territory. They'll react aggressively to anything they perceive as a threat.
He cobbled together makeshift equipment from kitchen supplies. Meat hooks became capture tools, rolling carts became mobile barricades, and freezer suits provided some protection against claws and teeth.
First priority is the mountain lion reported near environmental control.
Hank decided, studying the station schematic.
If life support isn't maintained, we're all in trouble.
With Rex at his side and two nervous but determined Darmonians as backup, Hank headed toward the environmental control section. The station corridors, normally busy with traffic, were eerily empty as the lockdown protocols had confined most residents to secured areas. Halfway there, Rex suddenly stopped, nose twitching, ears forward. Hank immediately raised his hand, signaling the team to halt. "What?" one of the Darmonians began, but Hank silenced him with a sharp gesture. Rex's attention was fixed on a side corridor, his body tense but controlled. Hank recognized the signs. There was a predator nearby, but not yet visible. He motioned for the aliens to back up slowly. From his improvised tool belt, he took a length of cord he'd fashioned into a snare. The coyote burst from the corridor without warning, charging directly at the closest Darmonian. Before it could reach its target, Hank stepped into its path and swung the snare like a lasso, catching the animal around its midsection. With a quick twist of his wrist, he tightened the loop and used the coyote's own momentum to swing it into the wall, stunning it momentarily. In that brief window, he managed to secure its muzzle with a second cord and bind its legs. The entire encounter lasted less than 15 seconds. The Darmonians stared in shock. Hank dragged the subdued coyote to a nearby storage room and secured it inside.
That was a small one,
he told his wide-eyed companions.
Let's keep moving.
They reached environmental control to find the situation worse than reported. The mountain lion wasn't just near the section, it was inside the main control room, where 3 technicians were trapped in a glass-walled supervisor's office. The big cat paced outside their refuge, occasionally leaping against the glass which had already begun to crack. "The glass is failing," one technician called through the communication system. "Rapid assistance required." Hank assessed the situation quickly. The control room had only one entrance, which would force a direct confrontation. The mountain lion was easily 150 pounds of muscle and fury, far more dangerous than the coyote they'd just encountered.
"I need something to distract it,"
he told his team.
"Something that moves and makes noise."
One of the Darmonians produced a small floating drone from his utility belt. "Maintenance unit. Can be remotely controlled."
"Perfect. Send it in. Keep it away from the glass. I need the cat's attention on the drone, not the technicians."
As the drone zoomed into the control room, the mountain lion immediately switched focus, crouching to stalk this new intruder. Hank used the distraction to enter with Rex, signalling the dog to circle left while he moved right, creating a pincer movement. The plan worked initially. The mountain lion was so focused on the drone it didn't notice them, but as Hank moved closer with his snare ready, his boot squeaked on the smooth floor. The big cat whirled, instantly identifying the larger threat and launched itself directly at him. Hank had no time to use the snare. The mountain lion's weight hit him like a truck, knocking him backwards. Powerful claws raked his chest, slicing through the freezer suit. Rex darted in, teeth snapping at the cat's haunches, trying to draw it off his master. Even years of wrestling steers and breaking horses hadn't prepared Hank for the raw power of an enraged mountain lion. But they'd given him quick reflexes and strong arms. He managed to grab the cat's throat, keeping its jaws away from his face as they rolled across the floor in a deadly struggle. The mountain lion's back claws tore at his legs, but Hank held on. Slowly tightening his grip on its throat, Rex continued harassing from behind, preventing the cat from fully focusing its attack. With a surge of desperate strength, Hank rolled on top of the thrashing predator and applied a chokehold he'd once used on a rodeo bull that had pinned him against a fence. The mountain lion fought wildly, but Hank maintained the pressure, cutting off blood flow to its brain. Gradually, the big cat's struggles weakened. Hank didn't release his hold until he was certain it was unconscious, then quickly bound its limbs with cord, passed to him by one of the astonished Darmonians.
Holy creator,
breathed the technician who emerged from the glass office.
You subdued it with bare manipulators.
Hank winced as he stood, blood seeping through his torn clothing.
Earth creatures evolved together,
Hank said, checking Rex for injuries.
Predator and prey constantly adapting makes us all tougher.
He turned to his team.
But thank the lucky stars you didn't nab a mama lion. Let's get this cat secured and move on. We've got more work to do.
Over the next hours, Hank's team expanded as more volunteers joined, impressed by initial successes. Reports flowed in of animals loose throughout the station, some in critical areas. Many aliens were attempting to soothe the cute Earth pets with offerings of food or calming music, invariably making situations worse. Hank ordered a station-wide announcement: stay in secured rooms, barricade doors, no attempts at interaction with Earth animals under any circumstances. He organised systematic sweeps, section by section, prioritising by threat level and strategic importance. The next major crisis emerged when a pack of coyotes cornered a group of VIP delegates in the Grand Ballroom, including representatives whose safety infected interstellar relations. Hank deployed Sadie and Scout with 2 alien assistants to herd civilians from adjacent sections while he and Rex tackled the coyotes directly. Inside the ballroom, 7 coyotes had surrounded 14 delegates who had clustered on top of a central dining table. The coyotes circled, occasionally leaping up to snap at dangling limbs.
Rex round,
Hank commanded softly. The border collie immediately understood. This was similar to rounding up scattered cattle. He began circling the perimeter of the coyote pack, his movement catching their attention. When one coyote broke from the circle to chase Rex, the dog led it on a precise path toward Hank, who captured it with a snare. One by one, they separated and contained the coyotes, using the pack animals' own dynamics against them. Throughout the operation, Hank continuously educated his growing team about Earth predators, explaining territorial behaviours, hunting patterns, and why these animals weren't evil but following natural instincts in a stressful situation.
On our world, there's always something bigger or smarter trying to eat you,
he told them during a brief rest.
It makes us all a bit jumpy, but these animals aren't malicious. They're scared and hungry in a strange place.
Some of the aliens began to understand, showing new respect for Earth's evolutionary pressures. "Your world must be challenging," said one assistant after watching Hank wrestle another coyote into submission.
"Yeah, well, it's home,"
Hank replied simply. Just as they seemed to be gaining control of the situation, station sensors detected multiple hull breaches, animals clawing through weaker sections toward the vacuum of space. With life support already damaged from earlier confrontations, the station faced potential catastrophic decompression.
"We need to end this now,"
Hank decided, studying the station's environmental control systems.
"We'll use the air circulation to deploy a sedative throughout the affected sectors."
"That could affect our personnel as well," warned a Darmonian technician.
"Better drowsy than dead," Hank replied. "We'll isolate critical areas and give warning for everyone else to use respirators."
The plan required manual override of environmental systems in several sectors, including one heavily infested with escaped predators. Despite objections from his team, Hank insisted on going himself to the most dangerous zone.
"I know these animals better than anyone here,"
Hank said firmly.
"Rex comes with me. The rest of you handle the other sectors."
The maintenance tunnels leading to the environmental control hub were narrow and dark. Perfect places for frightened animals to hole up. Hank moved cautiously, Rex padding silently ahead, the dog's senses far sharper than his own. They were halfway to their objective when Rex suddenly froze, hackles raised. Hank immediately pressed against the wall, straining to hear. There was nothing, but he trusted Rex's instincts. The attack came from above. 2 raccoons dropped from a ceiling conduit in a frenzy of teeth and claws. One landed squarely between Hank's shoulders, scrabbling wildly. The other barreled straight at Rex.
"God damn it!"
Hank grunted, slamming backward into the wall. The raccoon tumbled off with a screech, but immediately scrambled back, fur bristling and teeth bared. In the tight space, there was no room to use the snare. Hank kicked out hard, catching the raccoon in the ribs and sending it skidding across the tunnel. When he turned to help Rex, he found he didn't need to. Rex had the second raccoon pinned in a corner, barking sharp warnings, but not closing in.
"Good boy,"
Hank muttered, already moving toward them. He bent down with the snare and yelped as pain flared in his calf. The first raccoon had recovered and sunk its teeth deep into his leg.
"Little bastard,"
Hank snapped, grabbing the creature by the scruff. He shook it loose, wrestled it into the snare and secured it, breathing hard. Then he quickly caught the second, still snarling, but mostly pinned by Rex's presence. Dragging both squirming animals into a storage compartment, Hank took a moment to inspect the bite. Deep, bleeding, but no arterial spray. He tore a strip from his shirt and wrapped it tight.
"All this for a couple of overgrown bandits,"
he muttered, giving Rex a rough pat before limping forward.
"Let's get this damn job done."
They reached the environmental control hub and successfully initiated the sedative distribution program. As they worked their way back through the tunnels, they encountered more animals, but all were becoming drowsy as the sedative spread through the ventilation system. The plan worked better than expected. Within an hour, most loose predators were incapacitated, allowing capture teams to secure them safely. Hank led final sweeps with his remaining team, confirming all threats were contained. The station was saved, though worse for wear. Rex's wound from the raccoon fight was treated by grateful alien medical staff who marvelled at the dog's stoicism and rapid healing.
Your companion's cellular regeneration is remarkable,
commented the chief medical officer.
and his pain tolerance exceeds our species by several magnitudes.
"It's tough,"
Hank said simply, stroking Rex's head as the dog leaned against his leg.
"We both are."
2 days later, Hank stood before the Consortium Leadership Council, his dogs at his side. Rex still sporting a bandage on his flank, the council chamber was formal and imposing, with the 9 highest-ranking Darmonians seated on elevated platforms. Rather than gratitude, their opening statements were accusatory.
The damage to Stellar Harmony Station is estimated at 67 million credits,
began one councillor.
14 delegates were injured and 2 remain in critical care.
You should have warned us more strongly about the dangerous nature of these creatures,
added another, glaring at Hank.
Our experts were misled by your planet's categorization of these animals.
Hank stood his ground.
I warned you people repeatedly,
he said firmly.
I told Coordinator Magova directly that these enclosures wouldn't hold predators. I specifically said mixing species would lead to disaster.
Hindsight simplifies complex situations,
dismissed a third councillor with a wave of her slender blue hand.
The fact remains that Earth creatures caused unprecedented damage and trauma.
Your containment failed, not my warning,
Hank replied, anger rising.
You ignored everything I told you because it didn't fit with what you wanted to believe.
The argument grew increasingly heated, with councillors talking over each other to assign blame. Rex, still weakened from his injury, suddenly moved from Hank's side and placed himself between his master and the angry aliens. Despite his bandaged flank, the dog's posture was protective, his focus entirely on the potential threat to Hank. The council chamber fell silent.
Look at that,
Hank said quietly.
He's hurt, but he's still putting himself between me and what he sees as danger. That's loyalty you can't buy or manufacture.
The head councillor, older than the others with paler skin, leaned forward.
Your companion is willing to risk further injury to protect you, he observed. This is the relationship you spoke of.
Partnership,
Hank corrected.
Based on trust and respect, I'd do the same for him.
Tell us, the elder said. How did your species form such bonds with earthly predators? Our evolutionary path included no such relationships.
Hank thought for a moment, then answered simply.
Necessity. At first, wolves, dog ancestors, were competitors hunting the same prey, but some were less afraid, came closer to our camps. We shared food, they warned us of dangers. Eventually, we hunted together, each bringing different skills. Over thousands of years, they became part of our families, bred for different jobs, herding, hunting, protection.
And the trust?
Asked the councillor.
Earned, not given,
Hank replied, scratching Rex behind the ears.
A good dog will risk everything for you, but you've got to prove you'd do the same.
The council conferred quietly among themselves, then the elder spoke again.
We have misunderstood much about Earth biology and relationships. Our research was inadequate.
Your researchers never got close enough to learn the truth,
Hank said.
You can't understand predators from a safe distance.
Perhaps, conceded the elder, in recognition of your service in preventing catastrophic station failure, the consortium extends formal gratitude and compensation.
Hank was officially honoured in a ceremony the following day, offered an ongoing position as Terran wildlife consultant with an enormous salary. His dogs received special commendations as sentient support partners, the first Earth animals recognised with status in galactic law. He declined the full-time position.
Got a ranch to run,
he explained to a disappointed Magova.
But I'll consult occasionally if you need me.
Before leaving, he established strict guidelines for any future Earth animal imports and insisted on proper training for alien handlers. The consortium provided him with advanced communication technology to instantly contact the station if needed. Montana looked exactly as he had left it. The mountains standing sentinel over his pastures, the sky stretching endless and blue. Hank stepped off the transport, his dogs racing ahead to inspect their territory after 2 weeks away. He'd used part of his payment to modernise the ranch, new irrigation, better fencing, expanded barn, but kept the traditional aspects he valued. The cattle seemed unimpressed by their owner's interstellar adventure, demanding feed with the same urgent moos as always. That evening, his neighbour Mitch came by to return the spare keys and hear about the journey.
So, what's it like up there?
Mitch asked, nodding towards the stars just becoming visible in the twilight sky.
All that high-tech alien stuff.
Hank considered as he watched Rex organising the other dogs to bring the cattle in for the night. Their movements a fluid dance of instinct and training against the backdrop of mountains and meadow.
Different,
he said finally.
Not better. Folks up there could use some common sense and a good dog.
As if understanding, Rex looked up at him and wagged his tail. The next morning, Hank's new communication device activated while he was mending a fence. McGover's agitated face appeared in the holographic display.
Emergency consultation required. Wildlife Manager Townsend.
Someone smuggled a small Earth predator aboard the station. The handler insists it's a friendly companion species, but it has injured 3 maintenance workers.
What kind of animal?
Hank asked, already suspecting the answer.
Designation honey badger, McGover replied nervously. Is this a significant threat?
Hank sighed, looking at Rex, who had perked up his ears at the conversation.
That might just be the toughest pound-for-pound animal on Earth. They fight lions for fun.
Immediate assistance requested.
McGover's voice had risen an octave.
We'll be there tomorrow,
Hank said, unable to completely hide his smile. Rex wagged his tail, ready for their next adventure among the stars.